but I really suppressed my emotions for a very long time because I felt some shame in the fact that I had really been working so hard and I'd given up 15 years of my life for this. And just when it was about to become successful, I no longer wanted to do it anymore. So, in that shame, I just made the decision that nothing was more important than my happiness.
How do you turn your rocks, the real rocks, into treasures? And how do you turn the rocks in your lives into something that is valuable? Well, today we have the pleasure of having Megan Murphy with us, who is the founder of the Kindness Rocks project that is gone viral into 9 countries. Megan, welcome. How are you today?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm so grateful to have you with us. And for the viewers, I had to restart this podcast several times because my tongue would not work. So, welcome again, Megan. I would love for the audience to get to know you a little bit. So, tell us how this project even got started because now it's in 90 countries.
Yes, yeah, it's all around the world now. And it started back in 2015, actually. So we're working, over 8 years ago. I was going through like one of those, I guess, rough patches in life where um, I found myself not really recognizing the woman that I had become. I had been really trying to achieve this dream of being a business owner and entrepreneur. And I worked at that for 15 years diligently, long hours. And just when my business started to really take off and become successful, 15 years in, I realized that I no longer found joy in it. And how I recognized that, because at first I didn't understand what was happening, was that I was becoming short with my friends and my children and my husband. And um, I was dreading, getting up and going to work, which that was kind of my telltale sign. But I really suppressed my emotions for a very long time because I felt some shame in the fact that I had really been working so hard and I'd given up 15 years of my life for this. And just when it was about to become successful, I no longer wanted to do it anymore. So, in that shame, I just made the decision that nothing was more important than my happiness.
Thank you for expressing that so well because I know there's so many, I'm going to say women, and I'm going to generalize that go through those feelings and can't put the words to them, that they feel stuck in their life or they get to a point they go, how did I get here? So thank you for stating that, Megan. Uh, what prompted you to actually begin this project?
Yeah, so again, that decision to give up my business and walk away after, again, many long years, I really had to focus on, what my goal was, which was, finding my happy again and being and actually starting to like myself again, right? Because I told you I didn't really recognize the woman who I'd become, and so my being short with other people was not characteristic of the person that I was, and so therefore I was not enjoying my own company. and um and so I had to look for things in my day that would bring me personally, just me, Megan, happiness. And I thought, if I found happiness in the things that I'm doing, then maybe I'll become a happier person and I'll begin to like myself again. Which is really like a weird thing to say, but I think many of us feel that way sometimes, and we don't articulate it, and that's another part of the project for me. So in any event, the first thing I decided to do was to turn off the news, because I would sit every morning and I would drink my coffee and I'd watch the news, and then I'd like get really anxious and angry, and I'd fall into that Megan that I didn't love with the emotions. So I turned off the news and I started doing beach walks, and that's where the whole thing began.
Elaborate on the beach walks because that is a very interesting way that a lot of us look for places that we can find comfort within ourselves. How did that turn out to be the beginning of this project?
Yeah, so I think for me, I'll say, I wanted to go to a place that I'd be alone because again, I was feeling all sorts of emotions that I was feeling very vulnerable about having and unsure if anybody would understand what I was going through personally. Um, and so the beach, because I live on Cape Cod, where we're surrounded by beaches, is the perfect place for that. And people come here from around the world on vacation, and yet I hadn't taken the time to walk the beach in those 15 years that I was busy working. So I thought, okay, the one thing I can do is put on my sweatpants and go to the beach and not really realizing, what would transpire there, just knowing that I could be alone, I could be out in nature. And, thousands of people come here, on vacation. So there must be something nice about walking on the beach. So it was that simple. And the first day that I stepped out of the car again in my big sweatpants and I just kind of like walked down this path to the beach and I just recognized that everything seemed so magical, like this the salt in the air and the colors of the water. And I just felt like it was exactly where I belonged. So, and I found a heart-shaped rock when I was walking that day, and that was like a little gift. So
I have seen some of the rock gardens out here in California. I'm in California, and the first time I saw them, I was so amazed by the various messages and how much joy they bring, especially to individuals that are out there walking, looking, searching within. So, how did you actually get started in this project? Because there are so many out there that are looking for something and they think that it has to be these gigantic steps, but that's
yeah.
not where you started.
No, so this is an important part of my story. So that day that I walked on the beach and I found a heart-shaped rock, again, that was one thing that brought me happiness. I'm like, oh, a heart-shaped rock. It was like a gift from nature. Um, and again, walking the beach was vulnerable because I was feeling really down and I was seeking. And it wasn't until I started noticing, finding those heart-shaped rocks that really brought me joy. And then I started looking at other people thinking, and this is when I got out of my own head thinking of like what other people might be going through as well, which takes us away from, this big heavy weight of our problems to think, oh, all of these other people might be experiencing the same thing. It was kind of the first time that I thought, if I'm struggling, maybe somebody else is too. And so it was in that moment that I actually had a Sharpie pen in my pocket, and I didn't plan on any of this. I just happened to carry lots of things in my pockets when I go to the beach, and I pulled out a Sharpie and I wrote a message. I wrote 5 messages actually on 5 rocks, and I left them scattered throughout the beach because I looked at these people and I thought they look like just like me, the same kind of expression. And they were just simple uplifting messages, and that makes all the difference. But they were messages that I needed myself, and at the time I didn't realize that whole process, which has evolved over the last 8 years, which I'll get into a little bit later. But yeah, it was really kind of believing finally that we're all connected and that I'm not alone, that there's other people, and that and again, it's if more of us thought that way, they say to treat yourself the way that you would treat a friend. I mean, that whole concept really holds true. Like, and think about that all the people that you meet may be suffering with whatever, that you've gone through. So that's where that whole idea came from.
I love the idea that we're all connected and totally believe in that no matter where we go in the world, we're all humans making our way through it. What I loved about your project and what I continue to love about the project is the simplicity of it, yet the depth of it from something simple as rocks that were turned into treasures. And I call them treasures because when people find them, it hits them at the right moment. Can you share some of the stories that you have heard through the years and how people are truly impacted by this?
Yeah, so many stories. And the magic behind the project is that one message at just the right moment can change someone's entire day, their outlook, or their life. And the magic behind it is that when you put a message on the rock that you need yourself and you put it out into the world and then someone else finds it, more often than not, they're going through something completely different, but that message can still resonate for them. And many examples that come to mind are there's a veteran, Joe Kane, who lives in California, Coronado, California, and Joe was recently retired. I think it was the Navy. And he was walking in a park in California and he saw a kindness rock and he thought, what is this? So he took it home and he's like, oh, I'm going to try painting some rocks. This is kind of cool. So he started painting rocks and it became his art therapy, he said. So much so that now Joe, is doing art classes for the community and he's worked with veterans doing kindness rocks. And again, he was like, it was just that one simple message that he found that meant something to him. And it was a different idea, to find this in the park. And so now he's doing that to paint it forward. Other examples are there's a woman, Bex Hall, who lives in Ohio, and she was going to get a transplant. She was on a transplant list, and she was running out of hope because no one, she was down far on the list, and there was no donors, and she was at the hospital. And she said she was looking in the mirror and really not recognizing herself. She'd basically given up. She's like, I don't know if I can, hold on for this transplant. And she looked on the sink and there was a message that said, don't give up. It was a blue rock that was painted in white, which is very odd to have that in a medical facility, but that's what happened. And she shared the picture of the rock and she said, it was that moment that I had faith to carry on a little bit more. And luckily, Bex has received a transplant and she's doing fabulous today. And she too found this love for art. And now she does so much beautiful art in many different capacities. So those are just two of the, I say, thousands of stories that people have shared with me. But, it's like you never know what one simple act. And what was interesting to me was that you said, so many people feel like they have to do something grandiose, right? Like, and that overwhelming feeling of like the world is crazy place. I'm overwhelmed. What can one person do to make a difference? I'm just one person. You're just one person. The listeners are just one person. And it can feel so overpowering. But what we can do is chunk that down. And I always say I have 3 questions that I ask myself for anything. And these 3 questions I asked myself at the time. Number 1 is what is the need? Right. So I knew for myself there was need for kindness, there was a need for more joy. And then the second question is, what do I know? Okay, what do I know? I'm just Megan. I live on Cape Cod. I love art and I love heart-shaped rocks. Maybe that will make a difference. And then the third question, which is the key question, which brings us into action mode, is how can I help? So how can I look at the need, look what I know as an individual, and then what can I do to help? So whether it be about painting kindness rocks or doing anything, it can even be if someone in your family's having an issue, like those are 3 questions that are really big to kind of go through.
Excellent, excellent questions. And I hope they wrote them down because they do get you to take action, which is the place that got you to have this movement that has expanded into 90 countries, which is incredible. What are the steps that started to occur, Megan, that you didn't plan this from the beginning? You were out on the beach attempting to work on yourself and began with the few rocks, the 5 rocks, and so on and so on. What are some of the steps that led to each other for it to become what it is today?
Yeah, so because I had that business background, this is the way the universe plays tricks on us, right? Because I had a business background and I knew that this was something that really needed to get out into the world beyond myself because I started to see the impact it was making in my community. So how do you scale that, right? So a lot of people that are in business would be like, how do I scale my business? And in this moment, I was like, how do I scale this activity that's bringing me so much joy and it's helping people in my community? So that's when I took the steps to create a website so people could reach out to me, and therefore I said, here's everything that I did. You go create your own kindness rock painting group in your community. Here's all the tools. Here's the resources. Go and do that. And then there was a lot of media coverage around it just because the stories were so beautiful. So that is how it really took off. And that became like from taking it from my own personal hobby into this movement. Because when you share authentically from your heart, and you don't make it about money or fame or anything, you just kind of do it because you feel a purpose in it. That's typically people can see that from the outside. I know myself included, many of us are skeptical of people. um, Many of us have been burned before. We're being inundated with people trying to sell us something, or and this is not that. Everybody can participate. They have a rock, they have a paint pen, they can go ahead and do this project in their community, which is the beauty of it.
What's the biggest impact you think this project has had on you and your family?
Yeah, so I have finally, this is a question I get a lot. I finally found happiness in this project, and I like myself again. These are two very important components, to be happy and to like yourself. Um, so it's life changing because that powerful combination of enjoying your own company again, and the person that you are and being proud of who you are, and and also then able to like share that in the community. My kids say, gosh, mom, you're a totally different person. So that's been really powerful, personally in my own family. And I do feel so driven, and compelled now to continue to create different things to put out into the world, surrounding this, because I just, someone's got to create it and spend the time to put it out there. And my family is very supportive of that, and I'm grateful. So
What are some of the things that you've created because you saw the need to serve others? I know you have books out there. What other things did you create with that purpose to help someone else?
yeah, so a couple of things. Immediately, I'm going to be launching a certified workshop facilitator program. And the reason why is because anything that spreads so big can also get watered down, right? And so there's really, I have a 5-step process in creating a kindness walk, which is art therapy based. So it's a way to kind of cultivate self-compassion first and foremost, and then compassion for others, because I think it's so important. Too many of us are givers. We give without giving ourselves kindness, and then we get depleted, or we feel like, oh, I did all this. Why is anybody like noticing? You have to really give yourself that love and kindness. So that process is important to me, and that's going to be need based. It's going to be very like low cost. It's just, but I've been working on it for months. I'm going to be spreading that out into the world so that people can kind of share that process, because I believe in it. So it's so important. The second thing that I am starting to do is I'm taking women on trips. Women, because I am a woman, and there's so many women in this project, and many of them have either lost a spouse or been divorced, or they just want to kind of feel empowered. So I'm bringing women on trips around the world. I've taken a few trips to Kenya, and I have a Mexico trip coming up. So there'll be more of that, and the connections that are formed on those trips are really beautiful. Um, and after I did that, what I realized from those trips is the power in sitting in together, side by side in a circle and sharing stories. So I'm starting a women's storytelling project that I will launch, like the Kindness Rocks project, to make it a movement to spread throughout the world for women to come together. It's called Heard. And the idea is to come together to listen, learn, and lift each other up through storytelling. So that's another thing that I'm working on that I can't wait. I've done many events here, and they've been so well received. So
I love all these ideas and the plans that you're putting forth. I have a friend of mine that is launching a network, and the whole intention of it is to bring women that have a mission and a vision into these series on television, put them out there so that women like you can be heard. Because women are looking for that connection. What are
Yeah.
some of the things that you have learned on those excursions?
Oh, it's really kind of amazing. So the women that have come so far, they said yes, eh, just because they had this like little spark of an inkling inside, like this seems exciting. Luckily, I think they felt comfortable enough with me through my social media, doing videos and things that a lot of people are like, gosh, I feel like I know you. And it's just because like when I put on my social media, it's me, just walking on the beach, no makeup, very much like every other woman out there, like just having a conversation with them. So there's been a comfort level. So they have trusted in that, which I'm so grateful that they've trusted me. And then they come on these trips and just making the trip, because many of them haven't flown alone before. Many of them are like, what am I doing? And the first day, I have all of the women sit in a circle and we just share our why for coming. And women open up, and in their vulnerability, it becomes this like wave of connection, like deep connection. And so these women, I can tell you, they form bonds that are just so beautiful. Where they have now lasting friendships. And one of the Kenya trips, all the women want to go back together. So we're going to Tanzania next February because they're like, I can't wait to travel with you ladies again. Um, so I think that's beautiful. And I know that it's life changing. Many women have reached out to me from these trips and they said, gosh, I now feel like there's nothing I can't do.
What is it in those trips, honestly, like for you, even when you started this journey, that you had to let go or change or become because of these trips?
Yeah, so I never planned on even doing these trips. This was a calling almost. I had a friend of a friend who's like, you need to meet this woman. And she was lived in Kenya. She lived on the Cape with you, which I never met her. And I just kind of listened to that. And she put something on social media. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I feel like I should go for some reason. And so, but when I was there, I have a strong intuition. And so I paid attention. There was something in that trip that I'm like, oh, and Gabby is her name, my dear friend now. She's like, we should do this together and bring women. And I said, yes. For me, that intuition, again, it's almost like finding that first heart rock. It sparked something within me that felt like this feels right. This is what I should be doing. And then I I got so much out of the trip for myself. And again, going back to what I said earlier, if I feel a certain way, I now believe that other people are probably feeling similar. Where before I never trusted that. I thought I was the weirdo that feels this way and nobody knows. Now I trust that intuition that if this is affecting me in this way, it would probably affect other women the same. And more often than not, that's been true. That's probably the greatest gift that I've received from that very first trip and from now taking women on these trips.
And delve a little more deeper into you personally, because obviously going from the United States to Kenya is a lot different. What changed within you that you can go, wow, look how life is like comparison women to women?
Yeah, so I think it's just greater perspective, right? So sometimes it takes us to get out of our comfort zone and our environment to go someplace that we've never been before. Just having the environment of where we are being so different that it makes us feel different. And there's also a vulnerability in that, and there's a trust among other women. Um, and so that, like, just that in itself, that being in a different atmosphere, like environment, is really important. And that greater perspective of that, again, we're all connected. So those things that happen when you challenge yourself and you're all doing it together creates this really special bond. And when you bond with other women through them sitting around traveling with you and their storytelling and things, you gain a much greater perspective of the woman that you are. Right. It's that's the beauty of it. Like I just did a video yesterday about we're all teachers and students, from that ancient, Buddhist quote about, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I believe that we are all that for each other. Some days we're the teacher, some days we're the student, and sometimes we're both in one. We're the teacher and student for whatever life whatever life brings us. So
Again, what's it like to expand this project and not have it watered down like you stated earlier? Because it's about something bigger than the
yeah.
painting of the rocks and stuff. So how do you spread the wings and not get it watered down? What are you working on that?
Yeah, so that's what this certified workshop facilitator program is. It's not just for people that want to certify, to be certified to do these workshops in their community. It's for anybody that wants to take it to actually take the workshop themselves. So it's a twofold. So I go through everything in that, my 5-step process, those 3 questions about what we should do in life. I talk about perspectives because I'm a trained life coach as well. So I go through a lot of life coaching things in this course. But for me, it's very important. The watered down part of this project is that I know how wonderful it is already. But if every single person that's doing this project knew all this that I have in this workshop, which is like that the 5 steps, the how we see ourselves versus the others, I call it the art of connection. Um, and it's multi-layered. If they could see all of this and actually then implement it. So if you, for example, were just painting rocks and you really enjoyed it and you're like, oh, I just love the connection in my community, it's going to be amped up when you then learn this process. And so every rock that you paint will be like a personal therapy moment, right? If you with the rock. And I do believe right now we're having a huge mental health crisis around the world, and that there's not enough therapists to handle the need. I'm not saying that this is going to solve that, but I'm saying it's something that can help. I've witnessed it personally, I've seen it in other people. And so that is why it's so important to me to amp this up, to offer more help.
I really do believe in what you're saying, even though it's not therapy, but it is definitely a big step in changing someone's thought process
Yes.
with with those messages. So as I look at a lot of wonderful leaders that begin a project and they have the total heart and the intentions of it, and somewhere down the path, something occurs and it becomes about the steps
Mm-hmm.
and this and that, and it loses its heart, it loses its message. And from what I've seen on your social media, you're all heart, which is beautiful. And I think that's exactly what this world is needing right now. And that's kind of why I was asking you that question, is that process of keeping the heart in there so
Yeah.
that as these people get trained, it's not about the process, it's about what the intentions of it is. What is it that you'd like to see once these projects and these trainings have gone on? What would you love this world to look like?
Yeah, I think again, let me just say I know. I don't think I know. Because again, I've learned to trust, you know, how I feel personally. That when we give ourselves the love and kindness that we need, that maybe we lost along the way, maybe we were in elementary school and somebody said something to us and it was really hurtful and mean, and when we believed it, or we had some big life experiences that really challenged us and left us feeling like I don't matter. Um, there's a lot of things that have happened to many of us. And so we all have this inner critic in our mind. Um, and so the most important part of this project is the self compassion piece. I believe that the world needs self compassion. And it's not selfish, it's not self oriented, like take care of myself first and everybody else. It's a different form of that. It's a heartfelt love and joy from within. And when we feel that as individuals, we emulate that throughout the world. It's like the butterfly effect, right? Which we've all heard of. When a butterfly flaps its wings on one part of the world, that the air current can be felt across the world. That's kind of what we're missing right now in the world. I think too many of us are walking around with this inner critic and we feel that we're less than, or we can't, or and so we just kind of give up. That is important for me. I think that the world would be a much kinder place once we're kinder to ourselves. So,
I agree. And then sometimes it's not inner critic, it's inner critics. Let's add a couple of S's in there some days, to be honest. I've heard you state, be the I in kind.
yes.
What do you mean by that? I mean, you kind of said that a little bit, but where were you going with that process?
Yeah, so the I in kind, I started that really because I wanted children to kind of it was really created it for children to really like think about themselves in terms of like, oh wait, it's up to me, like I'm the one who's responsible for the way that I respond rather than react to those around me, and I have a choice. Um, so that's why I created that. I think we all have a responsibility. And again, I think it's very important that like responding rather than reacting. So many of us want to react when to the outside world or to someone that's, not being kind to us, or somebody that cuts us off in traffic or whatever that is like there's a reaction within us that happens. And, we really just need to kind of take a pause. And the I in kind is also like a mindfulness thing, right? When you take that pause and you can think, okay, that didn't feel good, but maybe what else could be going on with that person that they don't really understand. So that's what I'm hoping to teach people, that we all have a choice. And also the mindfulness piece of recognizing when you're feeling triggered by something, when you're listening to that inner critic is there instead of that, love and kindness feeling. So that's what that's all about.
I love the word responsibility. And I know that you feel a lot of responsibility in this project. I teach young men and women all about these type of things. And the biggest thing that comes up is taking responsibility. And especially when it's the negative stuff, it's like, especially the negative stuff, because you get the choice of creating what you would like in your life. That's your responsibility, no one else's. What
Yeah.
is your feeling on responsibility within this project? Because it is spreading gigantically through the world.
Yeah. So, first thing before I go into about it spreading throughout the world and that responsibility, I just want to, because it just kind of popped in my head. So I do want to address this. And yes, the responsibility. And one of the responsibilities that I think is very important is forgiveness to ourselves and others, which is another part of the I in forgiveness, right? Like that's so important because the more that we hold on to, the more resentment we have, and that's just hurting ourselves. Okay, so back to responsibility about this project and what I feel in moving it forward is that I know for a fact that I'm called to do this project. That it's funny, I love this. Elizabeth Gilbert wrote a book. She was the one who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, but she has a book that's called Big Magic. And in the book, she talks about how, like creativity, like kind of circles ideas, circle people through the ethers, and it's waiting to be created. And it's like waiting for someone to grab it and say, I'll do this, right? Like, I'll take that idea and do it. So I do believe that I was one of many now, because look at all the people around the world that are doing this, who have a greater responsibility to ensure that the project is, again, utilized in the correct manner. And in this case, it's not the I in Kindness Rocks, it's the we. Because, one person cannot do this alone. This is huge. And so, my responsibility and my role is support. And in that support is trying to make sure that all of the right, correct resources and tools and concepts are articulated and put out into the world. For example, I really strongly, every time I do an interview, talk about leave no trace policies as well, because there's, a lot of people don't even know what leave no trace is. And it's all about being kind to the environment and not leaving things in national parks or, on mountain ranges and things like that. So the idea is that you leave only your footprints. Um, this is a very important environmental group that I tell people to go into research so that you know where it's okay and where it's not. Um, So there's all sorts of responsibilities that I feel personally in birthing this into the world. And, I'm committed. So,
I love that. I love that. And I love that you mentioned that you work with so many different groups. And the biggest thing that I notice is there's no competition.
Mhm.
And I think that's huge, especially for women where some feel like it's a competition. There's no competition in life. There's only collaboration. And
Yeah.
that's what you're kind of doing with all these various individuals in these various groups. I teach a program just like you're teaching a program, and we touch on very similar subjects, but it's all needed. Your touch is needed as well as someone else that's somewhere else in the world that's teaching something. We're all needed. Would you talk about how you feel on collaboration and building, like locking arms and going through this?
Yeah, well, I agree 100% with what you're talking about. You know, these concepts that I'm kind of trying to get out into the world aren't new. They're not mine. These are like old, ancient concepts about kindness and compassion and empathy and community. And so I'm just kind of putting my spin on how to utilize putting that information out there and educating people by use of a rock, right? And other people do it in other ways. And what's so beautiful is that you and I could be, trying to teach or educate on the same concepts, and we just have a different spin on it and our own individual, like perspectives or like, just ways of presenting it that might really resonate with somebody else. So your message might resonate with somebody very different than my message. And so the more people that are doing it, the better, right? Like it's not about like, wait a minute, this is me and my and I. It's about like, okay, great. Like you reached that person. Okay, hopefully I can reach this person. And the more of us that are out there doing this, the better, right? It's not about like, that's the goal, that's where you make an impact. If you are constantly butting heads with people saying, and focusing all of your attention on like, no, this is mine, rather than like, come on, let's do this, you're missing the boat, because I think you're just not purpose driven. Then it's more like me driven. And I think, you know what, there's too much of that in the world that we really need to, in order to make progress, we need to like support one another.
Do you have a vision or an imagination of what the world could be like as all of these wonderful projects get implemented?
Well, my hopes. I'm not, I know that the sea is big and deep and wide. My hope is that it reaches the people that need it the most. I, I have dreams, and every time I put my dream out there, I say, or something bigger. So I try not to limit it. But I do know that it's impossible to reach everyone, but hopefully, if we can reach one person and that person reaches two people, and then, and so on, that, then it just, you can touch more people around the world. And hopefully, again, the world becomes more kinder and more compassionate. And then it's a choice for us to turn away from those that it's not that way, and kind of put our attention to what matters. Um, I use a example when I give school talks to children about this project, is that when I was walking on the beach, I found two things. I found heart-shaped rocks, and they made me so happy. And I found pieces of sea glass, and they made me so happy. And the more that I would look for heart-shaped rocks, I would never find a piece of sea glass. So I'm focusing my attention on looking for heart rocks. Now I'm sure there's sea glass on the beach, but I'm not seeing it because I'm focused on heart rocks. And same thing, I would go back the next day, I'd find hundreds of heart rocks, never a piece of sea glass. The next day I'd focus my attention on the sea glass, and I'd never find a heart rock. So what we focus our attention on grows, right? So hopefully we'll reach the masses where we're all looking for that, looking for the good, looking for the kindness. And then we get caught up in that wave, and we, become a catalyst.
Why, in your opinion, is kindness and compassion so important?
Oh, it's what our world needs. It's what our world has always needed. we're all human beings. And at the end of the day, what really connects us, because we come from different, like you live in California, I live on Cape Cod, two totally different coasts. When I go to Kenya, right, the people live in a different area. Their upbringing is very different than mine. But what connects us, no matter where I travel throughout the world, is our human emotions. And so if we can understand that epiphany that I had myself, that if I'm feeling a certain way and going through something, that there's probably somebody else that's feeling similar. If we all stopped and thought that's kind of like how treat others the way you want to be treated. I mean, it's the old saying. If we truly saw that in one another, um, I just think it would be a much better place.
I agree. Very much I agree.
I think we get caught up in all this stuff, and it's not, you know what? I have myself too with social media, with being inundated with Netflix and all these things, and the pressures, the societal pressures to like fit in and live a certain lifestyle. We've all kind of moved away or got lost along the way. I mean, it's kind of like, and I still do it. I will be on social media myself, in between doing my posts and things. And I might go down the rabbit hole of feeling a certain way, like, oh, you should be this way, Megan, instead of, and then I go, no, 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 that's not, I have to pull myself out. Now imagine what our youth is growing up with in that comparison. So I've got a lot of work to do.
We do have a lot of work to do, but it's enjoyable work in the sense that we get to see the impact that it's having on individuals.
Yeah.
And you especially get to hear so many messages that come back to you that are just heartwarming. They're not the big things, they're the little things that are impacting people.
Yeah, actually, today, right before we got on this podcast, a woman messaged me and she said, "Hey, can I use this picture off your website?" It's a picture of me holding a rock. And she said, "I want to share it with my group because I want to really, show where this all started and kind of give you that." And I'm like, "Oh, that's kind of you." I'm like, "Sure, whatever." And she said, "I feel as if you are like a friend now that I would love to sit and have a cup of coffee with after watching your videos." And I tell my children that. And I'm like, wouldn't that be amazing? I mean, we've never met, her and I, but imagine if we thought of people that way, like, oh, I'd love to sit and have coffee with that person and just kind of get to know about them. Um, rather than being like, oh, they have all of that and I don't relate and there's a distance between us and that and again the gremlins in our head, I feel less than, or how am I, kind of how am I in relation to them? I think that that's just a beautiful thing. The messages I receive are lovely. It just proves to me every day that people are longing for connection.
That's huge. And honestly, that's how this podcast got started with us because of your post that I felt like, oh, I can connect with her. She's very real, that I
Mm.
was willing to reach out and get your attention. So that's beautiful for you to be posting this way and for others to feel like they know you. And I think that is what the world is looking for those connections that everybody is working on their life and on themselves and looking to become the best version that they can of who they are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think that's why it's funny. Like every time that I think to post a video when I'm walking on the beach, it's never the opportune time. Like I'm like literally like makeup down my face. I'm like, whatever. The wind is blowing. I'm exhausted. But I have something that I think is important for others. And it's about the message, not about anything about, right? It's about, oh, someone might need this today. It's literally like a human kindness rock. And that in itself, I think when you share that authentically, just like, oh, I think someone might need this. I needed this today. When you share your own vulnerability, it shows other people like, oh, okay, I'm not alone then.
That's huge, Megan, because even for me, when I do some of my videos and stuff, a lot of times I don't have any makeup on. I don't care because it's
Yeah.
about the message, like you're saying, because the world has done a job on all of us
Yeah.
in attempting to look a certain way, act a certain way, especially for the young generation that's coming up. they're getting wise to it, but social media in itself has really accentuated this. You got to be a certain way. And us coming back to no, we have to be human, we have to be real, is the bigger message. Do you get most reactions on those posts versus ones that are dolled up? Is the nicest way to say it.
Yeah, I think yeah, most of my posts when I'm on the beach or I'm, just like, okay, this is it. This is me and this is what I need to say. I didn't realize the impact that they had. I mean, people will reach out to me. I don't care about the numbers. In fact, my videos get a lot less viewing than a rock, which, if I had an ego, I'd be like, oh no, and I shouldn't do them. But the messages that I received back from people being like, I thank you. I needed to see another human being. And when you shared that today, it meant the world. Just even if I get one of those, that means I'm going to do that again, no matter how uncomfortable I feel doing them. And I didn't really realize the impact until I was in Sarasota, Florida, and this is a fluky thing. A couple of weeks ago, and I walked in, and a woman said to me, "I drove 300 miles to come and meet you." She said, "You saved my life," and I'm like, "How did I save your life?" And she said, I was watching one of your videos when you were walking on the beach, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. And she said, and you literally saved my life. And again, this is not about me being like, it's about a person that needed human connection and to know that somebody else was feeling the same way as them, which let her know that somebody cared. It's as simple as that. It's not like, and I said to her, I'm like, you have all the wisdom inside of you. The fact that you actually resonated with that message means that that's in you, right? And it was just waiting for you to say, embrace it and say, yes, it's okay to feel this way. It just so happened that I mirrored exactly what you needed that was inside of you at that moment to come up.
I think those messages are beautiful because the world is crying for that genuine human connection.
Yeah.
And I so hope your project continues to expand so that people become a lot more real in their life and are willing to let some of the facade of life that's been built on all of us so that we can talk authentically, so we can share some of the things, so we can begin to find real solutions. That's
Yeah.
how I look at these projects that you're doing, that they open up the door to go, what's going on, so that you can actually break down some of the barriers and build some real solutions and connections.
Yeah, and also to urge other people, like, like you were saying, you do very similar work to mine and you have your own individual way of presenting that. Like, imagine if you and I, can inspire others to like, what is my gift? What is it that I have to share? What message do I have to share with the world? And kind of embrace that and do that. Like, that's amazing in itself, right? So,
Yes.
more of that and less of like, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't know everything, or I mean, I don't know about you, but if I sat in that, like, which comes up sometimes, if I have to get on a stage and do a talk or something. The funny thing is I have to give a talk in April, and like to 300 people coming up, and I'll be flying in from Mexico, the trip with the women, and then I have to do the talk the very next morning. And I'm already like saying to myself, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I'm like, Megan, like, you've given this talk a million times. Like, what do you, and it's that inner critic that sits with us all the time. We all have it. So we have to just recognize it and be like, hey, you, get back there, get off my shoulder.
I have a friend of mine, I'm going to use a bad word in a sense. She says, it's the shitty committee. It's like,
Oh,
silence that
exactly.
committee.
Oh my gosh, exactly. It's like, oh, leave me alone.
We do talk about the same things in a sense, in a different way, because I say to a lot of the individuals that I teach, you come in with this unique fingerprint that is only yours, and you leave your footprints on the world in how you show up and how much you learn. So I think it's so great for you to continue to expand again, for each of us to continue to expand and to encourage someone else to step up, to show us their unique fingerprints. Let's see what we can create because that will turn the tide over to bring in a lot more kindness, a lot more love into the world because We're seeing their gifts. We're allowing them to express themselves. And that's what I see in your project is in that little rock that someone is expressing a little bit of who they are now. Share a rock that my sister did for me, which
Oh.
is my treasure based on that. So, Megan, what is the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go either on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, which is the Kindness Rocks Project. Twitter is at the Kindness Rock because it's too long. I have a website, thekindnessrocksproject.com, where there's tons of information there. And if you go to the website, you can sign up to get the emails, and I will not fill your email box with, like lots of emails. I really only share once a month an email blast, which has information of up and coming things. So those are probably the best ways to get in touch with me. So,
Megan, what is something that you'd like to say that I might not have asked yet so that we don't get off this podcast and go, oh, I wish she had asked me this part?
oh yeah, no, I mean, I think you were pretty thorough. Um, well, I know what. This is going to be so fun. So I do a lot of like say Facebooks or Instagram posts. And one of the things is I have all these cards, right? And on the back of all these cards, there is a rock, kindness rock. And so sometimes I do these things called card pulls, which I'll tell you what happened was I used to do Facebook Lives early in the day. And I'd say, I have these cards. Does anybody want me to pull a message for them? So it's almost like if they were walking on the street and they came across a kindness rock and they're like, this is the perfect message for me. So I'm going to pull a card for us, for the audience. So whatever this message is will be the message that needs to get spread out into the world for one of your listeners. So, okay. Oh, this is perfect. So since I'm going to show it, it might be backwards, but it says, you are enough. You're perfect the way that you are. So that's the message I want to leave all of your listeners with is that you're enough and you're perfect just the way you are.
That is a perfect message for sure. I do have one more question for you. If I put you in front of the entire world and said, give them a message besides what you just pulled, what would you say to the entire world?
I would say, love yourself more.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Megan, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on today. And this has been a lovely conversation.
Thank you. And to our beautiful viewers and listeners, please remember our attitude always, always determines our altitude in life. We'll see you in the next podcast.